All right, Cody McBroom is our guest. He's the owner of Tailored Coaching Method. He's the artist formerly known as Cody Boom Boom McBroom. He has the same mission as us to help people change their lives for the better through health and fitness. I'd say Cody is wise beyond his years. He's got a young daughter named Blakely, and he was an integral part of helping Blakely and I transition from an in-person coaching business to full-time online back in 2019. We hired Cody as a mentor. So without Cody, there probably would be no podcast right now because he was always telling us from day one, start a podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Cody.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. It's good to even just catch up, and to be able to see your face again and talk. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah, we would have weekly check-ins during the mentorship, but we kind of lost touch since then, but it's good to see you. I've kept up with you through social media for sure.
Same, man. Same. I've been watching what you guys are doing.
So I mentioned you've got a daughter named Blakely.
Mm-hmm.
What's up with that? Where did that name come from? And I mean, there aren't a lot of Blakeleys running around out there.
So she is almost 3. She'll be 3 in March. And she is in that like extreme sassy phase. Like it's just crazy the amount of attitude that girl has. But in like a cute, funny way. Like she's actually a really good kid, but man, she's spicy at times. The name actually came from 100% Shannon. It was my wife, Shannon. She, her favorite actress is Blake Lively. And I don't know if she just said her name really fast and it sounded like Blakely, or she just was like Blake Lively, Blakely, or whatever. But she told me that that's how she thought of it. And I said, I love it. Her middle name's May, which is after Shannon's grandmother, who she was really close with and passed away, which I love too. So this is honestly, besides the last name being McBroom, it's 100% Shannon's doing. But
That's cool.
but I loved it. She threw out the name, and I was like, I think as a guy, it was when we originally were when she first got pregnant, we just assumed it would be a boy because for 6, maybe 7 generations in my family, there has never been a girl born into the McBroom family. It's just men, just boys and boys and boys and boys. My brother just had a boy. My dad had 2 boys. His brother had boys. Like that's just what we do. And so she came up with a girl name, and I just didn't even try. I was like, well, I love that name, and it's not going to be a girl, so that's fine. Like, we'll go with that if it is. And then I had like a bunch of boy names, but of course,
well, it had to be a little bit of a trip for you when you saw a coaching application come through from somebody named Blakely. You probably did a double take when you saw that.
Yeah, because I had never heard that name before Shannon said that, and then you guys came along, and I was like, no shit, that is crazy. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I've talked on our podcast before about my love for 90s alternative music. And even though you've got a long sleeve shirt on right now, if anybody's watching the video version of this, so they can't see that you have a lot of tattoos and you actually kind of look like a 90s alternative rock star. So what's the first song you ever learned to play on the guitar when you picked up guitar?
Oh,
I have vivid memories of my first song I learned. So I'm wondering.
The first song was, I actually think it was Iron Man by Black Sabbath, to be honest.
Okay.
Very easy riff to play.
Uh-huh.
And then it was Enter Sandman riff by Metallica. The only 90s music I've actually learned, because I played for a very short period of time, gave it up, and I just recently picked back up. Come As You Are by Nirvana. And then you remember Everclear?
Of course.
Santa Monica. So that one, I learned some of the chords for that one as well.
Yeah, it's like do 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 do.
Yep, very very
simpler.
Yep.
I think my first one was Nothing Else Matters by Metallica, which was essentially like 4 notes. Do 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 do. Yeah, so that's the way you got to learn though. Pick something simple and get good at it. It's kind of like we coach people to do now, right?
Yep, exactly. It's my next one I'm trying to learn is an Oasis song, which is one of my favorite bands. I'm very all over the map with music, to be honest with you. It's funny because I'll be listening to like hardcore punk or hardcore metal and then like gangster rap, and then I'll hang out with Shannon, listen to Blake Shelton or Luke Combs, Eric Churchill, I think his name is, just a bunch of country music that she loves. And then I listen to a ton of 90s alternative rock like Oasis or grunge
Yeah.
music and stuff like that. So I actually have a couple. So I started my right sleeve, so I have my whole left sleeve done, and my chest and my leg. I'm getting my back done and my arm done by the same guy, and I have a couple like song lyrics from '90s
Oh man,
rock music and stuff that are going in there.
I expect to see a blog post on that next year
Oh yeah, you
for
will.
sure. So, we're living in Idaho right now. I know you live in Washington State. You actually live very close to where I was born and have never been back to. We wanted to come see you and visit in our time in Idaho, but of course, COVID had other plans for that. But I think I've seen on your Instagram feed that you're a snowboarder.
Yep.
What's harder, snowboarding or skiing? Because we've been trying to ski more since we've been up here.
I have never put my feet into skis in my
Are you
life.
serious?
Yeah, never. Um, I believe, honestly, I think it's from what I've heard, I think it's pretty equal. I think it's like whatever you start with is typically, and like when I was really young, I actually was, as funny as it sounds, an aggressive rollerblader, like a trick rollerblader. So I actually did some pretty cool shit. Like, I mean, big handrails down big stairs and huge ramps and gaps. And so my dad just assumed I would ski and because he skied, but my brother snowboarded and I wanted to be like my big brother. So I just was like, I'm going to snowboard. So I snowboarded and rollerbladed. And then eventually I got into skateboarding because my brother made me realize how lame rollerblading was at the time. So I was like, I got a skateboard, I guess. But it's one of those things where I think like I'm kind of just natural on a board, so it just
Mhm.
comes to me easier. Like skis kind of freak me out, and snowboarding. Like I actually just went snowboarding the other weekend, and that was the first time I've been in 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was funny because I kept saying, I was like, oh yeah, it's been a few years since I've been boarding, and then we did the math when we were on our way up to the mountain, and I was like, man, I haven't snowboarded since I had the Explorer, the Ford Explorer I drove in high school, which the transmission blew out my senior year. So I was like, damn,
So
it's been
do the
10
math on
years.
that.
Yeah, so it's been a while, but it came back quick, natural.
That's cool. So let's talk a little bit about coaching and business and that kind of stuff. There's a huge mental side to what we do as coaches, and we're also doing all this within the context of our regular life too. So I think we all have both people in our everyday life plus our clients that we really want to see a change for them. Like we want it really bad for them because we know that they need it. And then as coaches, there's this kind of inner conflict, both with not being able to help the people in, close to us in regular life change, and then our clients that we really want it for, but they just can't seem to make a change, even if they leave us as clients, before we can really help them make a change. Like, how do you deal with that inner conflict when you really want something for someone, but they just don't seem to want it enough for themselves?
It's tough, man. I think, as you grow as a coach, I think it gets in this. I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but it gets easier to deal with the more people you work with because one experience, you realize that you can't save everybody, right? And the other side of it is if I have 10 people and two of them just aren't getting with the program, I'm like so focused on those two people and I'm so upset. If I have 60 people and six of them are not doing so well, then I'm probably going to be more focused on the 54 or whatever that are doing really well.
Yeah.
So I think when the masses get higher, it does help. But ultimately, I think it actually helps as well to be coached, because there's times where I've been coached and I just didn't do the work because I didn't feel like it and I didn't get the result. And when I can put myself in that position, I have to sit back and go, well, fuck, I can't blame the coach. He didn't do anything wrong. I just didn't do my part. And you have to understand as a coach that clients know that too, right? So very rarely will somebody get mad that they don't get results. Like get pissed at me if they don't get results. Unless they're doing everything I say and it's not working, which is never the case. It's always like either A, you're just not doing the work, or B, there's something else physiologically going wrong with hormones or gut health or something like that. And they know that. So they know it's not as simple as me saying, hey, hit these macros and you'll get results, right? We got to dig deeper and it's going to take time and patience. So they know that. They have some understanding and empathy for that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think it really helps to kind of realize it's even like I tell new coaches all the time too, like they feel like they have to respond right away and constantly be on their phone and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey man, like your clients have a 9 to 5, right? Yeah. So if their boss or their manager or whoever it was or their customer reached out at 7 p.m., do you think they would respond, or would they wait till the next day to get back to you? Like, oh, they wouldn't respond. It's like,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, I know you care more than the average worker does, but you can have balance. They understand, right? And if you can get back to them, great. Email them back at 7 p.m. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can't feel guilty for not, because people truly do understand we're human beings, you know. And I think remembering that and putting yourself in your client's shoes is really helpful.
Yeah, that's definitely something that Blakely and I have struggled with and worked hard to get better on as we've gotten more and more clients. Is just putting that pressure on ourselves to be available beyond what is really healthy for us in our relationship and just for our work life balance in general. So that completely makes sense.
Mhm.
So another part of your business is actually helping people like us. I mean, we hired you as a mentor. It's how we found you. Helping online coaches become more and more successful and get better. Um, Out of all the people that you've mentored and that you continue to mentor, is there kind of some common thread that separates the people who ultimately go on to really be successful and the people who kind of stay about the same?
Mm. That's a really good question. I actually think it relates a lot to the last question. I think it's the people who see the most success in that realm, I think, are the people that take action despite resistance. So what I mean by that is, as a mentor, one of my jobs is to push people, right? It's to challenge people. It's to encourage them to take action, of course, but more than that, like, give them advice on things that aren't always that easy, right? That kind of are pushing into your discomfort, right? They're getting out of your comfort zone. And I think, and this is a trait that I have and I've built over the years, but I'm also just naturally kind of this way. Like, if a mentor tells me to jump, I leap. Like, I don't think twice. It's like, if I trust a person's advice and they tell me to do something, I just do it. And then I think about the consequences or ask for forgiveness later, kind of thing, right? Like, I'm just like, let's just fucking go, and then we'll figure it out along the way. And those tend to be the people that see the best results. It's the people that I get on a call with them and we go over 5 new action steps to take that I think will help their business or help their coaching or their client relationships, their team, whatever. And by the next time I talk to them, or even before that, they're like, I'm already done. Like, this was finished. And I think, honestly, that's the trait across anyone who's successful. The clients that I have that are doing training and nutrition that are super successful, those are the people that get the best results. Are the people, when I tell them, and I don't mean this in like a authoritative way, but
Yeah.
like, when I tell them to do something, they do it. You know, it's hey, we need the diet to be this way, the training to be this way, and that doesn't mean it needs to be extremely rigid or strict. It's always flexible, but the point is here's the instructions. They just go do it. They don't make excuses. They just take action. And I mean, that's even in my team. The best coaches on my team are that way. All my coaches are amazing, but they're all action takers, right? Even we recently brought on, we haven't officially titled her yet, but I would call her COO, Chief Operating Officer. And then Travis does a lot of my media, but what people don't see outside of content is he's doing a lot of behind the scenes work with our systems and our payments and our structures and our funnels, all kinds of just tech stuff that just goes way over my head. But they work together. We had a meeting on Tuesday, and I mean, an hour-long meeting of like all these different things that need to happen, what we can do, ideas, all this stuff. I come in today and half of them are already done. Like,
Yeah.
it's just action. So I think the common thread across all successful people in general is just they're just action takers. They're go-getters. And if you don't want it, I can't give you the result. I can
Yeah.
tell you what to do. And I'm the first to admit, I've had plenty of mentees and mentor clients that didn't see extreme success, right? But it's 100% because they just didn't take action enough, right? And I always say too, there's also a risk element to it. So I've had mentor clients that actually ended up going and working for other people and being really successful within somebody else's business, because there's entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs, right? So some people I worked with, they were go-getters, they were action takers, they were entrepreneurs. They wanted that fire under their ass, the weight of the world on their shoulders, the pressure to make shit happen, the risk that's required. And then there's other people who are like, I love my craft, but I don't want to take that risk. And I think that's more of a technician. If you've ever read the E-Myth, there's technicians, managers, and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I think these technicians are super creative, super great at what they do, but they need somebody else that is kind of the visionary and the risk taker at the top that allows them to master their craft within. Um, And that's really cool too, because for me, if I can pull that out of you, and then you can realize like, fuck, I'm not an entrepreneur. Like, that's not what I want to do. For me to be happy, I got to go work with this person and help them build their business, because then I can stay in my lane, in my zone. And now they're super happy. And there's multiple people that have done that too. So I think, and I don't want to say that's not successful, because that is very successful, but there's still a lot of people who didn't take action and didn't find that clarity, and they didn't get either side of it. Right. It's the people that have the clarity. And obviously I'm on the entrepreneur side. I love taking the risk. I'm the type, this sounds psychotic, but I'm the type that I almost need to set and commit to big targets financially, emotionally. Like, I have to verbally tell people like shit that is pretty out there, right? Because that pressure applied on me makes me go. If I don't have targets and financial burdens and things that I've committed to, I just don't push as hard, right? So I almost like, which is like a double-edged sword. Sometimes it can be overwhelming and stressful, but it's like I almost have to have like a lighter under my ass, just keep
I get it.
moving, you know?
Yeah, I mean, when I quit my job, I mean, I left a six-figure job. Blakely closed her gym, which was her source of income, because she had quit her job at Rice at that point. We moved to a state where we know no one, we have no other source of income. It's kind of like what you're talking about. You either figure it out through taking action or you end up down a different road because you didn't.
Sink or swim.
So I totally get that. And one of the things I appreciated about working with you was how much emphasis you put on what I think have turned out to be the things that really made a difference in us being successful. And that was focusing on things like education, not only like in ourself, but making sure that all of our content was educational and free and to be as helpful as possible, and spending less time on like the hacks of how to get more followers and that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people think that this coaching business is about like just having the biggest following possible. But, truth be told, we don't have a whole lot more followers now than we did when we stopped working with you. We probably have more clients now than we had followers back then. So I appreciate, you instilling that in us back in the day. And I would probably say that, I don't mentor people, but one of the things people probably focus on too much is trying to grow their social instead of forming deep relationships with people and doing the educational things that you teach.
I agree. I think that, at a certain point, it is obviously valuable. I find more value in really trying to grow my following now than I ever have, simply because I have a low end membership site, and we're developing an app right now. And so for me to have a ton of people following me, seeing what I'm doing in training, and then buy an app that's fucking pennies on the dollar, like, it makes sense, right? But like you said, true coaching, high end coaching, like what we do, it's relationship oriented. It's based on building connection. So I don't care how cool the picture I post is or how like nice the infographic is, like that doesn't create a relationship, right? And there's obviously ways to post good content to where you are breaking that barrier and building relationships with people. But the way I look at it is like there's kind of like a hierarchy and a step-by-step process to being successful in our industry. And the first thing is, one, the education. Like, before you try to figure out how to generate leads and how to get more followers and all that kind of shit, like, know your craft, right? Before I got on social media, I spent years studying, going to school, getting certified, interning with multiple strength coaches who have been in the game for decades. Like, there was so much behind the scenes work, because all I cared about was being the best coach possible. I just wanted to be amazing at what I did. After that, okay, now the psychology behind it. How do I connect with people? How do I communicate with people? How do I relate to people who I don't actually relate to, right? I'm working with people who are 40 years old, have 2 kids, have been in the army. Now that, like, I'm 18 years old as a new coach in this gym, how do I relate to this person? And then the next hour, I have a 67-year-old lady who has diabetes and achy knees. I'm like, okay, how do I be a chameleon, right? And form to the person. And that took me down a path of learning about psychology, learning about empathy, emotional intelligence, how to build relationships. There's so many good books and courses and all that kind of stuff that helped me do that. Once I did that, at that point, I understood how to coach. I understood how to relate to people. And then I didn't jump to social media. This is where people get it wrong. Well, they get it wrong because they start with social media, but I still haven't got to there yet. I went to Google. I'm like, okay, well, and John Romano has a really good analogy for this. He says, like, Instagram's like the party, the house party, right? Everybody wants to be there. Shit is popping. It's going to be fun. But Google owns the entire block, right? So all those buildings, all the apartments, all the condos, all the whatever, wherever the house party is, it's with, Google's the master. And Instagram doesn't really have an SEO per se with Google, but the point with that is I started writing blogs, and I started getting videos on my website. I started developing my website. I started building an email list. I started doing things that were going to get us discovered on Google versus someone having to find a hashtag. And the reason for that is because if people find me on Google, number one, I look more professional. It's more formal. It's not just like my abs on Instagram with a cool hashtag. It's a legitimate business, and they are searching for help. Literally, they're typing in Google, how do I reverse diet? How do I lose 10 pounds? Nutritionist in my area. Then I'm popping up, right?
Yep.
So I'm getting in front of people that aren't just looking to see cool shit and scroll by. They're looking for literal help, right? After that, then I go to Instagram, right? And then I start providing value. And then once you get through that, then I think that's where you start going into long form content like podcasts or long videos, seminars, things like that. But I think a lot of people, and it's funny because, I'm pretty good friends with Jordan Syatt now, and most people would think if you asked him for business advice, he'd probably have a ton of advice about Instagram, right? Because he's crushing the Instagram game. But his first piece of advice is always, first of all, go train people in person so you can learn how to work with people in real life. And then number two, write blogs, because if you can write a blog, you know what you're doing and your SEO is going to be better. And then get on Instagram. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, that was one thing you really encouraged us with. I remember one time when we were working with you, I was like, okay, I spent, 5 days writing this blog. It's 5,000 words long. You're like, that's not long. 10,000 words is getting close to a long blog. But I mean, we put in all those reps, put in all that time. And now when I look at our analytics on our website, some of those articles I wrote 1 or 2 years ago now get as many views as our homepage. People, we come up number 1 and number 2 on several Google searches for some pretty commonly searched things because of putting in that time. So you're dead on with that, and I appreciate you guiding us in that direction.
Yeah, it's a long game thing. I think a lot of people, Instagram, it's a quick ROI and it's a quick dopamine kick. So like if I post something cool and people like it, I immediately feel successful. I'm like, yes, I'm getting right.
Yeah, but Blakely and I've been talking about this a lot lately, and this would be a good transition to the next thing I want to talk about. But we kind of feel a little bit dumb sometimes when we look back through our Instagram feed and we look at all the valuable content that's in there that we don't even own. We don't have an easy way to reference it. We don't have an easy way to send it to a client who needs that help. So we need to hire some help. So I want to ask you, we're at the point where we know we need to hire help. We need to hire an admin to help move some of that content that's on platforms that we don't own over onto ours that we do own. We need to hire another nutrition coach. We need to hire another coach for our workout programs. How did you know when it was time to hire somebody? And what did it feel like to make that jump?
The moment I started saying there's not enough hours in the day, I was like,
so for us, 6 months ago.
exactly. And that's exactly how I felt. I was like, yeah, I needed somebody yesterday. And I think the hard part is, as an entrepreneur, like Digital Barbell is your baby, right? So every single role that you'll ever need to fill, part of you knows that you'll do it better than anybody else, right? Even if that's actually not the case, you're just egotistical and biased about your own business, which we all are. That's the hard part, right? So the first person I hired was an assistant. Travis started helping me with media, but solely because I lived with him. He was my roommate at a house with another guy, and he saw what I was doing in the kitchen with this shitty flip cam, and he was like, "Hey, I think I can help you a little bit." So he just started helping me, and then I hired an assistant, and I actually put out a feeler on the podcast and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for an assistant." And I had a bunch of people apply, but it was like, "No, you're not good enough. No, I don't know you. No, this is weird because I don't have a personal connection with you. You live in Europe." Like I just had all these excuses, and it was really just me being biased and egotistical. And I ran into this guy, and it's actually really ironic how this happened. But I was living in an apartment with Shannon. We just found out we were having a baby. So we were like, let's get a house because we can't raise a kid in this little apartment. So we're moving. I never trained in the apartment gym because I hate the apartment gym. There's a gym down the street. I'm only going to go there. But this day we're moving. The movers take the truck, and I'm like, all right, I have like an hour before they get back for the next load. I'm just going to go get a quick lift in the apartment gym. there's this guy walking on the treadmill, and I went to high school with him. He's a little bit older than me. I was like, oh shit, dude, you live here? And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, I'm leaving today. And he was like, man, I'm literally listening to your podcast right now. And he's like, my wife listens to it too. You remember Tori, right? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And he was like, man, she would love to work with you guys, but she quit her teaching job because we have 2 kids now. I'm a teacher, blah, blah. And I was like, man, I could use some help. I would love to work with her. So basically we traded. Like, I was like, hey, be my assistant and I'll give you a transformation. She lost like 30 pounds or so, crazy 3-month transformation. And then I was like, you're hired. And I just brought her on after that. And that's when I trusted her enough to where, and this is kind of the first step when you hire somebody, is like, I created a table quadrant thing. And it was basically like, what do I love doing? What do I hate doing? What do I need to get rid of? And then the last one was, I think like what
Maybe
do
like what
I
do you need to do moving forward, like that you can't have time for?
exactly. So now I have these quadrants of like, all right, here's what I love to do. I'm going to keep that stuff. Here's what I need to get rid of. I like doing it and I think I do it best, but realistically, nobody knows who does it. So it needs to be done by somebody else to save my time. Here's what I fucking hate doing and I just want to give up right away. And then here's what I could start doing with somebody's help. And once I had that list, it became really clear of like, man, I'm doing a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily need to be doing, and I just started delegating stuff to her. And then once a coach came on, the same thing, started delegating clients to them. But I think ultimately you realize you need somebody when I would encourage anybody who hasn't hired yet, but is thinking about it, make that quadrant because it just makes it clear, right? And when you have that quadrant filled up with stuff that you're doing that you don't necessarily need to be doing, that's when I think you need to bring somebody on. And everybody has to remember that, yes, it's a financial burden at first, but nothing is as expensive as time, right? So if I pay somebody and it's like, that kind of hurts my pocket because I got to pay this person all this money, but I gain fucking 5 or 6 hours on my week, that's 5 or 6 hours I can do more. And this is why, like, I very, very rarely ever go inside the grocery store because we order our groceries. Even before COVID, it was like, how can I save time? It's $5 to order groceries. Cool. Do it. Done. Like, what else can I do? Cleaning the house. How much does it cost to get a maid in here once a month? So I don't have to help do that. Like, I want to, anything I can do to gain a little bit more time and be a little more productive. Because to me, it's like, I want as much, and this might sound just insane, but I want literally when I wake up 5:36 a.m. till 5 p.m., how much shit can I fit in that window, do as much productive work as possible, and then just tune the fuck out and hang out with my family at night.
Yeah.
And that's, and if I don't maximize that time and I don't have all this delegating, I go home and I'm thinking about work and business and emails and clients and shit like that. And that's not healthy.
Yeah, I like that. So I did not run this by Blakely, but maybe I'll just throw it out there as that this is our unofficial announcement that if somebody listening to this sounds like they want to be our admin, shoot me an email.
There you go. There
And
you
we'll
go.
start
And
there.
usually and I always tell people like, saying it somewhere like here is somebody who is a fan of what you do and believes in what you do is listening to this, right?
Yeah.
And therefore they're going to be, or maybe they're listening to this because they're a fan of what I do, but they know that I've known you for years and I agree with everything you guys do. So now they trust you. You know what I mean? And I think that's helpful. The other place to look is within your client list. 90% of the coaches that work for me were all clients at one point in time. So not only do I know they know my philosophy and my methods and how I do things, they understand my systems. And more importantly, they believe in me so much that they paid money to work with us. So if you're willing to invest in this company, I know that you're a good fit for this, right? You're serious about it. And that's always a good place to start as well.
Yeah, I like that. Well, let's flip over to some nutrition stuff because that's a big part of what we do. So you and I we're on the same page as far as everything in nutrition wise. I mean, I know that you're a big fan of the basics and you know how to get more specific outside of the basics, but you understand the importance of the basics. So thinking about that and just thinking about the general population, where do you feel like most people are putting too much emphasis and wasting too much time when it comes to their nutrition?
I mean, I think the obvious one that I won't go too deep into is supplements. A lot of people, right? And this, I mean, and this is coming from somebody who we're sponsored by Legion Supplements, which I will admit to, like, if you go to their homepage, the first thing, there's a video and he's like, you don't need supplements. but if you want them, I have some for you. Like, which I was like, yeah, that's pretty dope. That's trustworthy. But I think like for the most part, I think that like I subscribe to the idea of the nutrition pyramid and hierarchy created by Dr. Eric Helms. And basically that shows, energy balance and calories come first, then macros, then micronutrients, and then meal timing and frequency. And then last but not least, supplements. Um, so I think most of the time people flip that around, and that's the biggest issue, is that they start with supplements because that's what's marketed really heavily. And actually, if you go down the pyramid to the most important things, the marketing gets less and less and less, right? So there's a lot of marketing around supplements, and then there's a lot of marketing around nutrient timing and frequency. Actually, if you think about it, like pre-workout, post-workout supplements, when you're eating what, protein shakes that digest faster, intermittent fasting, things like that, right? Meal plans. And then we get into micronutrients, which is also heavily marketed compared to macros, which is going to be paleo, Whole30, organic foods, natural. Like, what does that even mean? And now grass fed doesn't even mean anything. You got to have grass finished. Apparently, it's just insane. And then you get into macros, which is more marketed than calories, but then last is calories, and that's the most important thing. The thing I would say is that a lot of times people, they do one of two things. They either flip the pyramid upside down, or they keep the pyramid the right way and they focus too much, or they idolize or put calories on a pedestal, right? So yes, energy balance is the first thing, but it's not the most important thing. And what I mean by that is macros can determine how well you adhere to your calories. Yes, calories are required in order for you to lose weight, but if your calories are set in place and the macros don't match your lifestyle, your activity levels, your hormone deficiencies or imbalances, those calories aren't going to work very well for you, right? If your nutrient timing is off because it doesn't match your schedule, you're not going to be able to adhere to your energy balance because your meal time doesn't match up with your work schedule and your balance in life. If you crush your macros, but you're eating like a kid and junk all the time, you're going to have horrible digestion and some nutrient deficiencies and cravings, and it's going to be hard to adhere to those calories, right? So I think
are you talking about like dinosaur chicken nuggets and stuff like that?
yeah, I'm not big on that, and one thing I will say to all the parents listening, before I had Blakely, I always said, like, my daughter is going to eat so well. Like, she's going to be eating meat, fish, veggies, like potatoes, maybe some whole grains, but like just really good quality food. And then you have a kid and you realize how hard it is to get them to eat something, and that every other day they love or hate something. Like, we find something she likes and we're like, yes, finally. And then the next day she's like, no, I don't like it. Like, what the fuck? You just like demolished that last night. So
Like a test of wills.
so I admit, like, you know what? You want to have a Pop-Tart, Blakely? Pff, go for it. You just need some calories, girl. I don't give a shit at this point. But that being said, like, I think that's the biggest thing people drop the ball on, is they either flip the pyramid around, they focus on things that aren't as important or don't make as big of a difference first, or they put the most important thing, energy balance, on a pedestal, and that leads to lack of adherence or lack of results. Like, I can't tell you how many people that I've worked with that come to me and they're like, I can't lose weight. I don't get what's going on. And I'm like, all right, well, honestly, your calories are in a good place. But you're following a low carb, high fat diet. And based on your activity level, what you're telling me you like to do in your lifestyle, and just your general goal, I actually think you'd do way better with a lower fat, higher carb diet, because we'd fuel performance, we'd fuel muscle growth. It's harder to store carbs as body fat in most scenarios, unless you're in a surplus. And I kind of go through the science with them. We flip the script and all of a sudden they get great results. They're losing fat and getting stronger, but they're eating the same amount of calories. So this is where, like, yes, the energy balance comes first, but it's not always the most important thing. And I think that's probably where people get it screwed up a little bit.
I'm a big fan of that, from Dr. Helms' pyramid too. And for people who can't visualize this or haven't seen it, it's a pyramid, and then up the whole side of the pyramid that encapsulates all of these things that Cody mentioned is adherence, because none of this actually works if it's something that you can't maintain long term.
Yeah. And
that's probably another ingredient that people leave out. Like, I did this 3 out of 7 days. Like, why didn't it work?
yeah, exactly. And below the entire pyramid, it says behavior and lifestyle.
Right.
So, like, and that obviously relates to adherence, but don't even track calories. If you just, like, if you're super fucking stressed out, you're sick, like you have a rough lifestyle, like, we have to focus on your behavior and your habits and your lifestyle before we can even start doing this. Now, most
Yeah.
of the time, people who come to us, they come to us in a good place and ready to do those kind of things. That's why they're coming to us, right? They have a lifestyle that will promote or condone being able to do those things.
Yeah. One of the things that we started doing, we developed these two 12-week workout programs, and we started giving away a free month of nutrition coaching when somebody joined it. And there would be a lot of people who joined that had previous experience tracking macros and calories, or they had already decided that's something that they wanted to do, even if they hadn't done it before. And I would encourage these people most of the time to start with what you just said, those underlying habits. Let me see pictures of what you eat for the first week. Let's see if we can pick some low hanging fruit, start to make some habit change that will line up with what your potential macro prescription might be. So it's less shocking when you actually have these goals to hit, because that's really what's going to make it sustainable for you in the long term once we get to that point. So
Yeah.
I
I think a great coach isn't always determined on what you do, but how you do it, right? So I think that you can know all the science, all the nutrition geeky stuff, but there's some people where they start being like, hey, alls I want you to do is, and this happens far less often now just because of how we market ourselves and everything. We usually get people that are a little more advanced, but hey, like, I just want you to start by having 2 scoops of protein powder post workout. Like, that's your diet right now. Do whatever the fuck you're doing already. I don't care. Just have 2 scoops of protein post workout. That's a habit that instills in their mind healthy living, right? And I think that's, like, I get asked about greens powder sometimes, right? They're like, well, should I get a greens powder or something? I'm like, yeah, you can. Like, they're cool. Like, you don't need it, but I'd rather you eat vegetables for sure. And they're like, well, you drink one every single day. And I'm like, yeah, but it's more of like, I wake up and I chug a full shaker with greens in it, and it starts my day with a healthy mindset. It's kind of like a placebo, right? Like, I'm just getting into the zone. I'm getting into that flow.
Yeah, you set the tone. It's kind of like setting aside 5 or 10 minutes in the morning to do some mindful thinking and some gratitude and things like that. Just sets
Yeah.
the tone for the day.
Yeah.
I try to tell people when I'm trying to get them to drink more water throughout the day, just to start off with a 20 or 30 ounce chug right off the bat. Yeah, there's physical benefits, but like you said, like it just gets you towards your goal for the day. And it also just starts out on a positive, like, boom, I already started the win. I'm not even out of my underwear yet. And I've already done one positive thing for myself.
Yep. Exactly.
So I wanted to talk about content a little bit more. You've been posting content for a long, long time. I spent some time last night scrolling way back in your Instagram feed. It's funny, isn't it funny how like the look of our content changes over time?
Yeah.
So as you look back through your feed and stuff like that, I don't know if you've done it in a long time, but like, where do you feel like you've made the most progress when it comes to actually like the production of your content?
Oh man.
Because it's changed a lot even since we started working together.
Yeah. It's yeah, and I get, like, on Facebook and on Instagram, the little memory thing, when you go in the
Oh
home,
yeah.
and it's always cool to see, like, it's like today it was like 4 or 5 years ago. I think it was 5 years ago, and it was like an ab circuit. And it looks like I filmed it on Snapchat and then just saved it and put it on my
Awesome.
Instagram. But it's like, damn, like, I've been doing, and it was at like the original gym I worked at, and I had like long hair and earrings, and I was like, fuck, that's a long time ago,
You
man.
had
Like,
long hair?
I mean, it was like a comb over, so it was way longer than it is now. But yeah, it was not a cool, like, I always tell Shannon, like, because I met her when I had like this long comb over ears. I was like, what were you thinking? Like,
Yeah.
how did you end up with me? But no, I think it's hard to say because it's an evolution. Like, there was a point in time where everything was done on my phone, quick and easy, and I just didn't give a shit. It was just like, all right, oh dude, I'm doing something right now, film it real quick. Films it, and like, while he's finishing his set, I'm literally just typing it up, posting it, and then we're going. And that was back in Instagram, where you could post anything without any sort of like formal marketing, and it would just explode because there wasn't that many users doing what you were doing. And then it got to a point where I was like, you know what, I'm going to get a nicer camera. Right. And then I was like, hey, I'm going to hire a photographer. Right. And then I discovered Canva, and I'm like, all right, let me play with this. And then I brought on Travis, and I was like, hey, I make these in Canva. Can you put them in Adobe and make them better? Absolutely. Started doing that. Hey, let's do some Photoshop shit. Like, I did a picture with, like, I have like 8 arms in the kitchen, or like just weird shit, So I think that it's hard to say what point was like the biggest leap, because it's just been like evolution. But I would say, like, the biggest pinnacle moment was when we got this facility in January, I believe it was, of 2020, about a year ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think it was, yeah. Uh, that was probably the biggest because it went from like me and Travis hitting up my buddies who own gyms and going like, "Hey man, when does your CrossFit class end?" Okay, perfect. Do you have an hour between that and the next one? Yeah. Can I come film? And we just like show up, film as much as we can, and dip. And we would do that like multiple times a week. And then do photo shoots on the weekends, on a Sunday midday when we knew the morning classes were done for the day, and it's just, once we got this place, all of a sudden it was like, man, we can do a lot of cool shit here. We can set up a podcast studio. We can have our computers next to each other. So I'm working and he's editing. And if he needs my advice on what I think looks better or whatever, I can just look over and we can tweak it. We can edit it. We got lights and shit in here now. We have, actually, I got him this for Christmas. It's pretty cool. It's kind of like a wine fridge, but
Uh-huh.
it's called the dry cabinet for media equipment. So it's like this big,
Oh,
like,
okay.
it looks like a big wine fridge, but it's got like lens holders, camera holders, so it keeps everything like mint condition. And
Yeah.
I don't know, something about cameras need to be at a certain temperature and dust free. But
Like cigars.
exactly, that's exactly what it's
It's
like.
like a
So,
humidor for cameras.
but we just have a spot where we can get so much more equipment now. Like we'll take stuff out there, and lately we've been turning out all the lights, setting up some cool like external lights, and just doing like exercise demonstrations. And it's like, holy shit, that looks so much cooler than it did when I was Snapchatting it on my phone. So it's like,
Yeah.
rather
It's
than one
definitely.
big pinnacle moment, which if there was one, it definitely would have been when we got this spot. I think it's just taking it more serious as I go. I think one of the things I've always done and valued is content production, because number one, I see the biggest emotional return of investment on that for the most part, because like I talked to a dude the other day who's from India and lives in New York now. And he's gone through some just really rough patches. And he was like, dude, I've been following you for 2 years and you've changed my life. Like, you've gotten me through some serious rough patches. I'm like, I've never even talked to you. Like, this is unbelievable. But that's the kind of shit that makes me just keep going and going and going. And then the other side of it is, when I first started, I couldn't even afford a coach. I was going to college, interning, so working for free, and I was working at a Rite Aid at night, closing on the highway, it's like for people not living out here, it's like CVS or like a little
Yeah.
tiny pharmacy.
Walgreens.
Um, but what I did is I would go on T Nation, I would go on Christian Thibodeau's forums, and talk to him and ask questions, and I would learn from these guys that were putting out free content, and it allowed me to change my life, start a new career, develop my body. So I've always just really, really valued it so much that I invest in it more than most people do. Like, I'm like, one of my bigger expenses is like, for the business, is content. It's like, how can we make this podcast better? How can we get a better camera? How can we get a different lens? How can we get better speakers? How can we get a better
Yeah.
mixer? Like, what can I do to make the production of what we do better, just to get more value? And that's
I
something
like
I
that.
really
And
value.
that's definitely challenging to hear you say that, because it just kind of goes back with hiring somebody. It's like when you get to a point where you're so busy and like you've kind of reached the threshold of both the quantity of stuff you can pump out and the quality of stuff you can pump out, you got to invest. It's just like we expect people to invest in us because they don't they don't know where to go. So it's encouraging and challenging for me to hear you say that, like, personally. We got to jump. As soon as we get moved in, we're hiring people. I'm gonna get Travis to fly out to Texas.
He's mine.
He's mine. It would be sweet to rent a facility. We've talked in the past, like, do we ever want to open a gym again? And then seeing you open that space and, like, kind of being like your own little private Mark Bell or hybrid performance gym kind of situation. Like, man, that would be pretty sweet again.
Yeah, I've always looked at it like the Mark Bell situation, because he doesn't charge. So like,
Yeah.
I mean, we got like friends, my in-laws, family friends, employees, significant others, like
Yeah.
everybody's lifting here, and it's always just like, yeah, man, come lift, come lift, come lift. Like,
Yeah, that's how we started, out of our garage, just letting people train for free. And it's just like this, the community aspect is just
yeah,
such a driver of progress, and just everybody enjoys it more when there's people around, for sure.
yeah.
So let's start wrapping this thing up. I mean, you've got 22,000 followers on Instagram now. You've got your own successful podcast that's killing it. You've been on other people's podcasts who have incredible reach. I'm talking about people like Mike Matthews and Jordan Syatt, like you mentioned. At what point do you kind of feel like you've made it?
I don't think you ever have.
Yeah.
I think I have a lot of thoughts on that. I think that, so just as much as I love like 90s alternative, I love hip hop. I've always loved hip hop, and self-made is always like a thing that, they talk about. And I always like had this weird thing of like, I want to be able to say like, I'm self-made, because I did start my business on my own. I didn't take out a loan. My parents didn't help me. Like, none of that, nobody in my family has ever been in health or fitness. Like, it was really just out of nowhere. But the amount of people who helped me do what I do today and who have helped me along the way, like, removes my ability from saying self-made 100%. And I think that really goes for everybody who's successful, But I think part of it too is really successful people are almost always process oriented. And that means that the journey never really stops. I even know of people who have built insane businesses, sold the business, and then started creating more business. It's like, why? You have millions and millions of, you do not need to make any more money, but it's like, it's not about the end result. It's about the creation. So I think that being a process oriented person and being so obsessed with the creative aspect of developing a business and developing individuals within my company, and developing results within clients and all that kind of stuff. I don't think I've ever made it. It's even if we did talk financially speaking, the amount of times I've said, once we're doing this much, or once I can pay myself this much, I made it, or I'm
Yeah.
good. I'll be happy then. I can't even count on my hands, man. It's just like, because it's never about the money. That's a monetary thing. It's an actual metric that I can see, and I can say like, okay, well, if we do produce this much money, that actually means that we have to have this many clients and be reaching this many people, which means that we're affecting
Yeah.
10 times that, because in order to get 10 clients, you gotta affect or impact 100 people, let's say, like in life in general, and through content and their friends and all that kind of stuff. So the amount of people is insane. So, but it's hard to dictate like, how many people did I impact this year?
Yep.
Fucking no. Like, you can't really make that calculation. So the money thing has always been a milestone of like, I got to make more, got to make more, got to make more. But I think what I started learning was that I never really felt satisfied or fulfilled, or really excited or happy when I hit a number, financially speaking. And usually when I'm like just about to hit that number, I'm already setting my next goal. So when I do hit that number, I don't even celebrate. I'm just like, on to the next thing. And once I read a book, it's not Start With Why. It's Simon Sinek's newest book. I can't remember what it's called, but he talks about this whole like process versus outcome oriented. And that's when it really clicked for me. And I was like, man, the reason I never feel 100% satisfied or filled is because an end result isn't going to give me that satisfaction or fulfillment. It's actually the process of getting there, the journey, that is giving me this sense of fulfillment and happiness. And once I realized that, it allowed me to really be present in what we're doing and be really, really excited about everything, and accept that I'm never going to make it. And I think that's the important thing, right? Like, if like, I'll never be happy, I'll never be satisfied. I shouldn't say I'll never be happy. I'll never be fully satisfied or finished with this. Like, people are like, oh, when do you want to retire? Never. Like, until I literally can't fucking do anything. Like, I just want to keep doing stuff, because that's my personality type, and that's what makes me happy. That's what life's about.
I knew that this was going to kind of be your answer from knowing who you are for sure. We watched the Netflix show, I think it's called The Minimalists, last night, and it's about getting rid of all the extra stuff and clutter in your life that doesn't really contribute to your happiness. And I think a lot that kind of goes hand in hand with what you're talking about. Like, it's not the goal of the money. It's like it's those messages you get along the way from your clients where they're like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I really appreciate what you've done for me, and like the way that the impact that it's had on my life and the way that I see myself and that kind of stuff." Those are like the little micro things along the way that I feel like are more meaningful and rewarding than any kind of external goal, because it's about the process, like you said.
It is, man. And if, I mean, we talked a little bit, I don't know if we're recording at that point, but I've moved quite a few times. And if I learned one thing on this last move, because we built a new house and I had to sell the last house before the bank would agree to give us the loan for the new one. Um, because the market is so questionable with COVID and everything. They're like, we just want to make sure that you can sell your house. So we sold it. We had to move into a little apartment for 5 months while it was being built. And not only was that really difficult, going from a big house to a little apartment with a 2-year-old, but also like, I was like, all right, well, we have a tiny ass closet now. I'm only going to bring what I really wear, which is basically like those one Nikes and then like some Chucks. And then I'm basically just going to wear black fucking joggers every day because that's all I like to wear anyway. I'll bring like 4 hoodies. And I don't need my watches. I don't need like I just didn't need any of the shit. And we just got into this house and I started unloading all this stuff. And I'm like, babe, we got to go to Goodwill because I don't want or need any of this shit anymore. And I think you go through phases. You know, I there was a point where I started making money and I was like buying some fancy watches. Like I got a watch case of all these dope watches, and I was like, I need to get a nice car. So I was driving a Beamer with rims all murdered out. It was a dope car, but it's like none of that shit. Like I don't show it off. I don't post about it. I don't care about it. Like I have a big ass nice truck because I like sitting in a truck, and I don't wear my watches ever. It's like I like just kicking it, tattoos and wine and cheese boards. That's what I spend. But I think like you get to that point where you realize like it is the little things, you know, and you really don't need that much shit.
Yeah.
Just don't.
It's the satisfaction of helping other people. That's what keeps us going, I feel like.
100%. And I think that goes back to one of the first things we started talking about with like being a good coach. When you can really, it's being selfishly selfish. Like I give and give and give and connect and want to help people because I feel so fucking good about it. So selfishly, I want to give you more because that makes me feel fulfilled in my life. And it's a win-win. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that that's really what drives me and a lot of people that are similar to us.
Yeah, love it, man. Well, speaking of giving back, why don't you give out the best way for people to learn more about you and connect with some of your stuff that you've got out there? I mean, obviously you've got your own podcast, but what else? What's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, everything is hosted at tailoredcoachingmethod.com. We recently changed the podcast name to the Tailored Life Podcast just to kind of keep everything in brand. And I think it represents what we do a little bit better. And then my Instagram is at Cody McBroom. That's where we do basically most of my content is on Instagram or podcast, but everything can be found on the website.
Yeah, if anybody who's listening to this, go subscribe to his podcast and just scroll back because there's tons of great content for, I don't know, when did you start your podcast?
I don't even know. We're on like 550 some episodes now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so a lot. We've been around for a minute with it, a couple years.
That's good, man. That's a testament to your consistency because we're only 34 episodes in, and it's work. It's work, but you've earned it. So I'm proud of you.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate that.
Good. Well, I really appreciate you taking your time to come on. Everybody go follow Cody, check out the stuff he's got out there, and we will definitely catch you on the next episode.